What is up, everybody? I'm your host, Nicole Mendes, on the podcast for the Big 12 Network, 10 Teams, 2 Rings on the Softball America Podcast Networks. As always, make sure you like and subscribe. We are so close to 1,000 subscribers. Once we hit 1,000, if you're one of those 1,000 subscribers, you can be entered to win a t-shirt of an NIL athlete of your choice. So make sure you go ahead and do that. You want to get a free t-shirt? Like, why not? But on this week's episode of 10 Teams, 2 Rings, I'm really pumped. Again, I say this every week, so I should probably stop saying that, but it's just so true. Every single week, there's something more to be said. There's something more to be added, but Big 12 this year has just gotten me so stoked. It's been so fun following them. But this week, we are going to get a little bit of Bedlam action early on. And then as we go on to the week, we're going to be able to kind of digest and see how the Big 12 ends up shaking out. There's a three-way tie. There's a three-way competition. We're going to talk a little bit about that. And also, I may or may not have made a super secret Big 12 lineup. I'm going to release that to you later on. And then just where everybody's going to be this upcoming weekend. So before we get into all of that stuff, I just want to say welcome to our guest on the pod, Karly Goodwin.
Hey,
Hey, how are you?
good. How are you?
I'm great. So you just came from practice. I learned you lived like a minute from the field. We talked about this before we press record, but I was telling you it's so nice living a minute from the field. I remember playing and I'd be driving my 12-minute drive back to my house and I'd be so cranky and like maybe speeding a little bit because I just wanted to go to bed. I was like, hey, you could just, do you walk there? Do you walk to the field?
A lot. Yeah.
Yeah. You're like, yeah, it's super easy. So tell me about yourself. I was doing a little bit of digging, I was searching around, and you're from North Carolina, and you made the jump to go East Coast all the way out into the middle of nowhere, Oklahoma. I did the same thing. I was from the South, went to the middle of nowhere, Oklahoma, and it the biggest thing that I kept seeing whenever I saw the interviews that you did coming to before you committed was you wanted to go somewhere that felt like home. And obviously Oklahoma State was a place for you. Tell me why Oklahoma State? Like why was this your place? Why is it home?
I think it's my home because it's just a small town, and I was from a really small town. I think my population was like 1,000, maybe 1,500. So, just it's not that small, but it just gives that feel. And during my visits here, I just met so many people, and everybody was just great. And I think the biggest thing was the coaching staff. Obviously, fell in love with Coach G and Shippy and all the rest. So they just really made me feel like they wanted me here, and that's what happened.
Yeah. Oh man, I love that. Tell me a little bit about that because I feel like this year with Oklahoma State, I just see I don't know. I read this article one time where it was talking about sports and athletes and teams, and they were saying the more they touch each other, whether it's like a pat on the back or like a high five or even like a hug or celebration, the better the team chemistry. I feel like I see you guys like always hugging, always high fiving, like always like giving that affirmational touch. Like your chemistry as a team just looks so solid. Like tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think coming in, I came in the summer. I think most of the freshmen did, and there was a lot of girls already here. Lexi Kilfoyle, Scotty. So I think that's kind of where I personally just kind of got to know everybody, and we hang out all the time outside of softball, especially in the fall when we weren't as busy. But I think the biggest thing is everybody says you have to love your teammates and stuff, but I think that we genuinely do love each other with everything we've got, and we really stress just being there and picking people up. And
Mhm.
I think I don't really know what it is, but we're all of us are pretty much huggers. We just love to give high fives. We love to see each other do great things, and I think that's just taken us really far, to be honest.
Yeah. And again, I know this is your first year, but from my experience being a Sooner playing against Oklahoma State, like, this is the toughest team that I've seen from Oklahoma State in a while. And you guys have been good for multiple years, like really, really good for multiple years. But there's just something about, like, there's a little bit extra toughness. Like, there's like a grit to this team that I haven't quite seen as consistently from OSU before. Like, what do you guys tell yourself to stay locked in those games? Is it something like inspirational? Is it something as simple as like, hey, like, I got your back? Like, what are you guys constantly communicating? Because you guys have had several games where it's been like tight on the line. What are you guys talking about?
I think the biggest thing is we stress over having fun, and we went through a little spell where we just weren't having as much fun. And one game before, after we dropped two at Iowa State,
Hmm.
we literally during warm-ups played a wiffle ball game. Like before we hit MVP and everything, we literally went in the outfield and played wiffle ball. And I think the biggest thing is we just have fun playing softball. And um, I just think I've told a bunch of people this, but we know that we're never out of a game. We're so gritty and just, I don't even know the word to describe it, but if we're down, we're like, hey, we're going for them. Like, we're not backing down. We're going to come back, and we're going to come back with more than they brought. So
Mm-hmm.
I think it's just coming into practice every day and being like, hey, we're refusing to lose today. Like, we're going to have fun, and we're going to stay within ourselves, and we're going to do crazy things. So I think that's the biggest thing.
Man, I love that. Like, just the self-belief in it's way easier to believe in a team than it is necessarily for you to perform at that level. But whenever you're going, I don't have to, I have teammates in front of me and behind me where I believe in myself, but like, I don't have to get everything done. I don't have to accomplish everything. Like, they can do it just as well. Like, I don't need that pressure on myself. That really allows you to have fun and just relax. And like you said, like, love the game, because ultimately, like, that's why your team's so fun to watch, is because that stuff is obvious, not just in the hugging, the smiles, but just the way that you guys play. It's so gritty. Um, I remember being a freshman walking on a campus, and I'm like, holy smokes, like, this is it. Like, I wanted to be in college for so long. I committed, I waited, I finally signed, and then I had to wait another year. And then you're finally there, and everything is so different from high school. Like, not just the pace of the game, but just the hours you practice for forever. You create a whole new social circle. You're with an entirely new team. How was that, the adjustment coming in?
I think it was definitely hard, especially in the fall. But like I said, coming in the summer just made it so much easier. And before we even got to September, August, September, whenever we first started, like I had already built relationships with all the girls, the coaches. We didn't get to see the coaches, but just, the girls all being together pretty much every night, almost every night. I think that helped so much that not the it kind of took away the fear of, hey, I have to prove myself to these girls. I think
Mm-hmm.
that was the biggest thing, and that made it so much easier, just being friends with them before softball even started. And like I said, the fall was really tricky. Just having to, like you said, practice for long hours of the day, being having to being told where to be at a certain time, what to wear. Like that was probably the biggest adjustment.
Yeah.
School has been super great. The professors have been so great to us, and
Mm-hmm.
like I said, just being
Yeah.
told where to be and what time to be there and what to wear. I think that was honestly the biggest adjustment.
You're like, oh, summer's over.
Yep. Hmm.
So when in the summer did you get to OSU?
So I got here the first week of June. I think it was the
Okay, so
4th or
pretty
5th.
early.
And then I was gone for a little bit with playing travel ball still,
Mm-hmm.
but I think I was here for a while before we even started practice and stuff. So
That's so nice to be able to just get to know your teammates, and there's like no pressure, no nothing. Like, it's just playing ball because you love it. Ah,
Mhm.
that's so fun. So you guys have had the battle of a lifetime this year. Like, you guys have been with your backs against the wall more times than I can count, but you have found a way to win. That pays off so much in postseason. But this weekend is different, but everything's the same, right? Because it's just softball and you guys are just playing and you guys are just having fun. But there's a little bit of electricity in the air. There's a little bit of spark. And before you hopped on, I was telling Gray, our producer, that was always my favorite weekend to play because whenever you're a competitor, like those are the moments where you're like, yeah, like, oh, I love it. I love the crowd. Like I love those big moments. Like that's my favorite type of environment to play in because you can just get big in those moments. You're gonna get to experience that this weekend, and I'm sure you're gonna shine. You have been time and time again so clutch. Um, but tell me a little bit about the preparation and the feeling going into this weekend because you can't focus on that too much. You want to focus on the routine staying the same. Like, what have you guys been focusing on? And then you, especially.
Yeah, I think pretty much the whole season, once we got into games, and especially conference, our biggest thing was just, like you said, routines. Like, we kind of got away from that at the beginning and we took a step back and we're like, hey, we have to stick with this every day. We don't really care who we're playing on the weekend. We're not playing them. We're playing the game of softball. That's what Coach G says almost every
Mhm.
day. And I think that's the biggest thing, staying with our routines and just not kind of looking ahead to the weekend and just saying, hey, we have to get our work done here if we're going to shine on the weekend. And um, I think another thing Coach G says is the biggest game of the year is the one tomorrow, like the next
Mhm.
game. So I think we can't look ahead. We have to look for the next game and just prepare for that one in order to get to the next one. So for me personally, I've not even just this week, I'm kind of every week since we've been in season, I've just had to, every Monday's our off day. So I
Mhm.
go hit on the tee for an hour or so just by myself, crank up the music, and I try to get to practice every day at least an hour or so early and just hit off the tee for what, 10, 15, 20 minutes. It doesn't have to be
Mhm.
much, but that's the biggest thing for me. And just going through old games and watching every at bat and just I'm a big like person that dissects everything I do. So
Okay.
just kind of going and looking through my at bats and seeing what I could do better or why I didn't exactly hit the way I wanted to that time or so I think that's the biggest thing for me going into this not only this weekend but every weekend.
Yeah, I love that because sometimes it's hard. You get so busy, but like you were talking about, like routine is so important and being able to establish that of this is what I'm going to be doing every week. It doesn't matter how busy I get. It gives you like a sense of normalcy and it gives you a sense of consistency. So I just I love that completely. So um as this weekend slowly starts to approach, it's more so about keep it the same. Don't let the moments get too big for you, but also you're playing against it's a top 5 matchup. There's going to be TV and all that and there's going to be people tuning in, but the biggest thing is you a competitor get to play against and your team competitors full of them get to play against Oklahoma, a team full of competitors. Like tell me less about Bedlam because that's always like an in-state thing, but more so like how excited are you to be able to get to play? Like, I don't know, I would always remember playing against top teams and I would just be so excited because it's like, it's gonna be good softball. Like, tell me a little bit about like the softball, the game that you love to play, they love to play. Like, tell me what you think that's gonna be like this weekend.
I think when, like you said, a top five matchup, just competitors against competitors, it's going to be a fight till the end. And
Yeah.
I think for me, especially, my adrenaline gets so high, and I just feel like I could run through a brick wall, honestly. And I just love that feeling, and I always have. And it kind of, I don't know how to describe it, but it's just it brings out the best of you and the best of everybody. And I feel like you either rise up to the occasion or you let the pressure get to you, and you can't do that in reality. But I think that's the biggest thing. I'm just so excited to finally experience that. I grew up watching that, and now that I actually be playing in it is just such a surreal moment.
I know. Oh, you're gonna have so much fun the entire weekend. Like, it is just gonna be so much fun. Well, I can't wait to see what you do this weekend. I actually get to call the game on Friday, so I'll be calling the
Yes.
first game, the opener. So I'll be like, oh yeah, and I talked to her just earlier this week. I loved just the way that your team has been approaching the game, like doing it the right way, because there's teams that approach it with a chip on their shoulder, and yes, sometimes you need it, but there's teams that approach the game for just like the pure love of it. And I think that whenever a team finds that, that is sustainable for a whole year. um and you guys have done such a great job of sustaining and staying the routine, so I'm extremely pumped for this weekend. I love watching good softball, I love calling good softball, and I think that's what we're going to get. So Karly, thank you so much for joining the pod. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, man. Like I love that. I love that reaction. Um, I actually had a teammate at Oklahoma. Her name was Rayleigh Pogue, and I think Karly might have had her accent beat. It was pretty thick. Sometimes I'd be like, "What is she saying?" But I just love how just open and excited and just passionate she was about it, and it wasn't the passion that you see sometimes, like, you think of Kennedy and, like, the stomp after the strikeout, which I also love, but the passion of, like, being able to go out and play a game, and just for the pure thrill and the pure joy of it. Like, sometimes I think it's tough, especially for these athletes in this day and age. It can be so easy to get caught up in what's my ranking? What's my team doing? What's my NIL deals? Like, I'm going to be on TV. I have to make sure I perform. I want to stay in the lineup. I have to make sure I perform. And there's so many things in this day and age of the sport where, because it's been amazing and it's risen to these new heights and new visibility, there's all these new things that these athletes are having to learn how to handle and juggle and deal with. And she has just been like crushing it. She's so clutch. So clutch. I wouldn't be surprised if she has a great weekend. But I'm so excited for that. But moving on, that was a great interview. But around the horn, just a quick recap of what happened last weekend before we talk about what's coming up this weekend. So last weekend, OU swept UCF 3-0. Texas swept Iowa State 3-0. Oklahoma State swept Kansas 3-0, and Baylor swept BYU 3-0. Then you had Texas Tech and Houston. Took the Friday and Sunday game, and Houston sold the Saturday game, but Tech wins that series 2-1. With that, first thing, we have like a three-way race, and every year I feel like this Bedlam series determines who's gonna win. And Texas, they have to win all three just to be, not just to be, but to be able to handily win the conference. OU, they have to win all three to maintain their one game lead. And then Oklahoma State, if they sweep and say Texas falls by one, like, this is just, it's so tight and it's so chaotic, and I just love it. There's so many possibilities. It's so fun to be able to go, okay, like, what's going on? Because this is the last week of regular conference season. And as we get into the Big 12 conference tournament next weekend, make sure to tune in here again, 10 teams, 2 rings on the Big 12 podcast on Softball America Networks. Make sure to like and subscribe. You can get that free t-shirt. But I will be on site, and I'll be covering for the Big 12 the entire week, previewing what's going on, previewing where should you go if you're a first time fan, if you've been there before, what are some new local spots. I reluctantly had to do some research, and I had to go to some different restaurants and stuff in OKC. So I did the heavy lifting so you guys don't have to. So make sure to follow me on Instagram. I'll be posting stuff about that there, but I will be covering the game or the tournament all week long next week. So this isn't the last weekend that you'll hear from me. I'll be covering the tournament, I'll be covering postseason, and then hopefully we will get a couple teams to the World Series, and I will be covering that as well. But this is the last conference series matchup and the last conference series for Oklahoma, last conference series for Texas before they move into the SEC. So it's a little bit of an end of an era, a little bittersweet, not as much as the Pac. I mean, after this year, the Pac is no longer, but you have to agree that for so long the Big 12 and Oklahoma and Texas have been kind of all intertwined, and so it'll be a little bit sad to see it go, especially being able to have matchups like Bedlam every single year. I mean, it's incredible. But with those matchups that happened, we have upcoming matchups. And I just want to talk a little bit about these teams before I give you the upcoming matchups. But for me, I would say as we head into this last week, it's that three-way tie. So whatever happens between OU and OSU will determine the winner of the conference. And that's the game to watch, and I think that's why all 3 of those games this weekend are gonna be nationally televised. Um, and then Baylor, to me, they have been the comeback kid. They started off their conference so tough, and they were plagued with injuries, and they had so many close games where you thought, "Yeah, like, this is a great game, it's so tight," and then they would lose by 1 run multiple times in a row, multiple series in a row. And it's just, you're like, man, I guess isn't it for them. They have done such a good job, but like they're just not clicking. They've turned it on. They've clicked. I think they've won their last 7 in a row. The only one who has a better series of games in a row of winning is Texas. And I believe they're at 7 or 8. Let me double check that one. But being able to um being able to have that kind of consistency on this latter half of the season, the latter half of conference is such a great thing to have. I would rather be finishing hot than be a team that starts hot. So for them, not only are they rolling into Big 12 tournament pretty strong, but they're going to be rolling into postseason strong and clicking on all cylinders. So that's going to be a team that you're going to go, oh yeah, that's a good one. Um, UCF, they are a good team, but they have been swept the last 2 series. Now, granted, they face some really tough competition, but being able to maintain and remember, okay, we might have lost all 3, but we had some really great shining spots. And then also, this is the expectation of what you're going to see in postseason. How can we adjust to that and make ourselves better? Um, I talked about it last week. I think UCF is a team that you're going to see in postseason that might not be ranked quite as highly as some other teams from another conference or other conferences that you would go, "Oh, like, I feel like their matchup is pretty good," but they just not quite getting the consistency with their wins that push them into that top 25. So they're gonna get sent somewhere and cause a little bit of disruption. I feel that for sure from them. Kansas, they are right now tied with Baylor, but they are on a 7-game losing streak. They started off hot, and the last couple of series, they've just puttered out and they've slowed down. Um, Again, it's all about clicking at the right time where everything's coming together into the right moments, into the right time. Postseason is coming up. That's when you want your team to be hot. Now, don't get me wrong, this weekend is where a lot of teams are going to figure some stuff out because they don't have the time. There's a little bit more urgency where they have to figure things out. Um, Whenever you look at Texas Tech, I think they're a team that could probably put a battle up in a regional. They put up a lot of offensive numbers. Houston, maybe. If they can figure out their pitching, they might put up some surprising numbers at a regional that they get sent to as well, because they've also struggled in conference, but that doesn't mean they're not a good team. It just means there's some things that if they want to go far, they have to figure out. And for Houston, it's definitely their pitching. And then we have Iowa State. Iowa State has just been an off year. They're a good team, but there is something missing from that team. And I believe it's that spark plug, it's that leadership. It's the consistency again, all the way around. So as we head into um, this upcoming weekend, we have our upcoming matches. We have BYU at Kansas, and that'll be on ESPN Plus. You have UCF at Iowa State, also on ESPN Plus. Texas at Texas Tech, that will be on ESPN Plus. And then we have Houston at Baylor, again, one more time on ESPN Plus. I love the accessibility of everything. Like being able to go and watch any softball game in the Big 12 on any given day, that's huge. And to be able to have that kind of access as a softball fan, make sure you're watching, make sure you're going out, even if you're not really paying attention. It does make a difference. And lastly, we have Oklahoma State at OU, Bedlam, the big one. Friday night, it'll be on FX1, so Fox Sports 1. I will be calling that game as the analyst. I am over the moon. That was a total surprise. I got a text from somebody going, "Hey, would you be interested in calling game 1 of the Bedlam series?" And I thought to myself, and I was like, yes. Like, that's not even a question that somebody should ask. They could be saying like, "Hey, I know you would be really interested," because I would. I was gonna go just as a fan this weekend, but Friday night, I'm gonna be able to go as an analyst. I'm so excited. It's what you dream of. Friday night is going to be on Fox Sports 1, and then ESPN on Saturday, and then ESPN 2 on Sunday. So the entire weekend is going to be nationally available. It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool what this weekend is going to be. It is the last time during a conference matchup that these two teams will face off. It's in state. It's in the new Love Stadium. There's gonna be a record crowd. You already know it. And it's gonna be for the conference championship regular season. I mean, it doesn't get better than that. It's going to be chaotic. It's going to be crazy. Um, and just rounding off the rankings for this week, you still have Texas at 1, Oklahoma at 2, and then OSU, they're ranked 5 with Softball America, 4 all the way across the board with the other polls. This is a really strong Big 12 conference, not just for regular season play, but as they head into postseason, beating each other up during conference play, not just those top 3 teams, but like those teams that I mentioned earlier that will go into postseason. They are used to that. They are used to that quality of pitching, that quality of defense, that quality of offense. That's not going to come as a surprise to them, and they're going to be ready. I'm really, really excited to track how they do the rest of the way. But before we talk a little bit about the conference tournament, because I will get into that all week next week, make sure you tune in next Tuesday. I will be going live from the Hall of Fame Stadium with a couple of those teams, coaches. So make sure you tune in next week. Subscribe, turn on your alerts, you'll get that notification. Before we do that, I thought it might be a little fun to make a Big 12 lineup, because I have been ranting and raving and going on and on and on and on and on about how good the Big 12 is. So I was like, let me just make myself really frustrated and make a lineup. So I have number 1, Angelina Allen from Iowa State batting the leadoff. In the 2 spot, I have Tiara Jennings from OU. Number 3, Reese Atwood from UT. I mean, she's been so, so good. Number 4, I've had Shaylin Govan from Baylor. Number 5, I have Jada Coleman from OU. And then number 6, I have Ilana Ugbayani from BYU. She was on just this last time. Number 7, Ashton Maloney from Texas. She has been on some kind of heater like nobody's business. And whenever you're able to have somebody like that in the bottom half lineup, like, get me fired up. Number 8, I have Ariana Villa from Tech. And then number 9, I have Karly Goodwin from OSU. It took me so long to make this lineup because there's so many good people. Like, I'm like, I want to put them in, but like this person is really good in this type of situation. And then this person's really good at hitting this kind of ball. And so it was super fun. I might tweet this out, but I would love to hear what your guys's ultimate dream team lineup from the Big 12. And this isn't, oh, I'm going to take 2 from here, 2 one, like make sure I get the whole team. Like, I want to know what your dream team lineup is if you could have anybody from the Big 12 conference into one lineup. If you go to the Big 12 conference, look at sports, you can see their stats across the board, how they rank against everybody, all the offensive players across the board. I think that would be really interesting, really fun. And then pitching, the fourth one might surprise you. I think if you have the right defense and the right players behind you, I think this is a really, really solid four. So for pitching, I have Lexi Kilfoyle from Oklahoma State, Sarah Willis from UCF, Kelly Maxwell from Oklahoma, and then I have Casey Hamilton from Texas. Those are my top four that I would pick. I think that is a staff and a half right there. It's pretty good. So that is all that I have for you guys today. As always, I'm your host, Nicole Mendes. 10 teams, 2 rings, the Big 12 podcast on the Softball America Networks. I am so looking forward to this weekend. I will be at Bedlam. If you're there, make sure you come up and say hi. Day one, I will be there as an analyst, but Saturday and Sunday, I will be there as a fan. So make sure you come up, say hi, say what's good. I can't wait to see y'all there. It's going to be a fun one. And last weekend, Big 12 making history, a little bit of closure going on across the board. But Big 12, man, what a conference it has been this year. This regular conference has been so fun to go through with you guys. Just make sure you're letting me know who your favorite team is, who your favorite players are. I would love to see those lineups. And make sure you tune in whenever we get into the Big 12 conference tournament. There's going to be lots and lots and lots of stuff to talk about then. All right. Thank you guys. Talk to you next week.